Hi there, and welcome to today's Conversion Conversation with Tim Ash and Greg Ott. My name's Casey Murphy, and I'm the Director of Marketing here at SiteTuners, and it's my pleasure to introduce you to today's presentation and our two amazing speakers. Today's presenters are Tim Ash, CEO of SiteTuners and author of the best-selling book, Landing Page Optimization. He has literally helped more than 1,000 companies, I think it's up to 1,200 now, worldwide to increase their conversion rates through a combination of conversion-centric site redesign, site test plan development, staff training programs, mentoring programs. He's got an education in computer science and cognitive science, which gives him a real unique perspective on the user experience and online persuasion. Greg Ott is the CMO of Demandbase, and he spends his days evangelizing how account-based marketing can drive a successful B2B customer lifecycle. In fact, the first time I met Greg, he was speaking at DemandCon, and since then he's become a popular speaker on the conversion conference circuit as well. Prior to joining Demandbase, Greg held marketing leadership roles at Classmates.com, if you remember that, Ask.com, and Procter & Gamble.
Thanks, Casey. We're very excited to have all of you listening in. Thank you for joining us. We are going to talk today about specifically business-to-business conversion. And business-to-business is a bit of a unique animal. What I'm going to do in part one is to try to give you a map of how optimization works in that space. And then Greg is going to give you some examples of advanced tactics you can use, some of the things that they're doing at Demandbase and that we've used similar products for in our tests and in our work. This is very powerful stuff. I think that you will be hopefully interested in hearing it. I want to give you a little bit about our perspective and where we're coming from. SiteTuners is an agency. We're based in San Diego, and we basically have a small business and a large business practice. On the large business side, we can help customers improve conversion rates in one of three ways. The first is website redesign blueprints. We don't build any sites, we don't code anything, but we'll give you the blueprint for a high-performing site. Now, sometimes customers say, bring in the bulldozer and start over. Other times they say, well, we just need a quick tactical facelift of our existing site. We can help with both. We also do landing page test plans and testing strategy, and increasingly with our larger clients, we're asked to create a culture of optimization inside of their companies and train their internal optimization teams and create all the processes around that. Okay, so that should give you a broad base of what we're going to be, the perspective that we're coming from. What I want to focus on now is what I call conversion optimization maturity. And before I do, I just want to jump in and talk about how this applies to business decision making in general. Because business to business really is different. I put it as a question there, but the answer is yes. Business to business is very different from consumer selling. One key component of it that you have to realize is that business to business kind of decisions or buying choices have much higher risk associated with them. This is not going to 7-Eleven to buy Tic Tacs. This is, you could lose your job over this. You mess this up, it's a mess, everybody's unhappy, it costs your company hundreds of thousands or millions or tens of millions of dollars as a consequence. Some of these decisions are very, very risky. So everything is driven by, pardon me, covering your butt and risk avoidance. There are also longer sales cycles. What we see a lot of in business to consumer are these direct response pages, and you hear about very high conversion rates for a page that says, buy it now, and we have 20% conversion rate on that page. Well, that's wonderful for business to consumer. It's not really practical for the business to business buyer. They're longer sales cycle, and that leads into kind of the next point, which is that there are lots of people involved. You have to go through screening processes, in some cases requests for proposals and other ways to mitigate that risk I was talking about. There are a lot of people involved in the decision. Some are actual decision makers, others are just gatekeepers that only have the power to say no. They can't say yes, but they can say no. So it's very different in that you have to convince a lot of people along the way, and they might have conflicting or even contradictory agendas. The other thing for online purposes, business to business is different because Business to consumer, we often talk about driving the most possible volume and awareness and brand recognition. With business to business, we really have to make every click count. And that's important because $1 million deal is very important. If you let that one prospect get away because of a bad site experience or some other problem, that has potentially high consequences. So the stakes are higher. Each visitor, at least each targeted visitor coming to your site, each important visitor from a company you might care about is very, very valuable. And a lot of them have different goals. In business to business, these last 2 points kind of tie together. You might have somebody that's from a specific vertical industry. The products and services you offer might apply to a wide range of companies, but in a way, again, partly from a risk avoidance standpoint, I only care about what you've done in my industry. I want direct comparables, and I say, well, in aviation, we have these special needs and problems, and over in financial services, those people do something completely different. And if I tell you, well, that's not true. If you're, for example, getting a marketing automation system, pretty much they're going to work the same way across all industries, but you're going to want to see proof that it works in yours. And sometimes there are indeed big differences in vertical industries, their complexity, how they do business, and key nuances. So you have to accommodate all of that. So what I'm going to give you next is kind of a pyramid, if you will, of conversion. A pyramid in a walk, crawl, run sense. You can't skip any of these steps, and you'll go through them in order. So find yourself on this map. We'll talk about it. Chances are you're on one of the lower rungs. No offense, but that's just a fact of life. The folks that are at what I call stage 5 right now are a tiny, tiny subset of even our clients who are on the advanced side. So the one key thing here, you see this graph up and to the right. We all love to see the up and to the right graph. But there's also a level of effort. That's both your payoff and the level of effort required. So to do nothing and have an unoptimized site is a very low level of effort, and it's also something that will get you no results or no improvement anyway from where you are. At the very top of the scale, I'll talk about some of the things involved in having real-time advanced personalization, and it's somewhat onerous to do, and you might have to integrate back-end systems and multiple data sources. You might have to have your all of your stuff up on content delivery networks to make sure that it's super fast, speed, and those dynamic experiences you're creating for your website visitors render quickly. So all of this plumbing and all of these disparate systems talking to each other needs to work seamlessly. And so there's effort involved, and along the way there's more and more effort, but the rewards become disproportionate. As these things build on top of another, you get kind of a multiplicative effect. So one stage kind of boosts the other. It's like kind of the stages in a rocket. The first one's real slow, but it gets you out of the thick atmosphere, and then it speeds up, and you jettison the old stuff, and you just achieve very high speeds and escape velocity. That's the super optimized stuff that we're working towards. Okay, but that's the map. Let me walk you through it. And let's see again if you can recognize where you are on this, and then we'll talk about doing some of the more advanced stuff that Greg's going to focus on. So the first is unoptimized, and most companies are still in the unoptimized stage. What I characterize as unoptimized is that the content on your site or your web experience was created without any regard for your web visitors or their needs. And you'll probably say, well, how can that be? I mean, my whole point is to create a website that's useful to my visitors. But the reality is, and the thought you've put into it, is typically that's not the case. Especially with business to business, we see a lot of what I call brochureware, static information. A lot of it is taken from other media. You say, well, I have sales sheets and one-pagers and print stuff and all of these other assets, and basically I just turn them into a website. And it's a pretty awful experience. Did you know that this is a true fact that in the very early days of television, when they knew it was going to be commercially supported and commercial based, so a spokesperson would come out and literally hold up a piece of paper and read the text of the commercial to the camera, because that's how you did it on radio. That was the previous technology. And I know it sounds kind of stupid, but that's what a lot of us are doing. We're applying old media to the web still. The other characteristic of unoptimized sites is a lot of the decisions about what goes on your site are political. They're made by the hippo, as my friend Avinash Kaushik calls it, or the highest paid person's opinion. And the focus is relentlessly on the company. This is who we are. This is what we do. Here's our products. Here's our divisions. Here's how we name our products. And in that, there's no visitor. There's no recognition of the visitor and the fact that they're trying to actually do something. The website behavior is not tracked. There's not a lot of accountability. And it's designed for a single audience. And this is very important to understand, that you have you're designing for treating everybody the same, as it were. So here's a quick example of an unoptimized site. It's just kind of brochureware. It's got a bunch of text, a couple of stock graphics, no clear calls to action. It's just read about us. Okay, well, isn't that wonderful? I don't even know what these guys do. I'm sure you probably won't either, even if you read this page. I'd just like to use this as an example of kind of a poor, unoptimized site, or poorly designed, rather, unoptimized site. Many of us are moving into what I would call the level of basic optimization. And basic optimization is content that's created specifically for your web visitors and trying to address their needs. So one thing you might be doing is considering the stages in the buying cycle. Are you early on? Maybe we'll have informational white papers for you to download. Or are you researching alternatives? Here's how we stack up against the competitive products or services. Or are you ready to act, customize your plan or call for, schedule a demo. So we're addressing the fact that we're not just kind of greedy marketers and trying to go to the very bottom of the sales funnel, because again, that won't work by itself in business to business since the sales cycles are long. That's like taking a 30-foot standing broad jump and asking someone to, hey, just sign me a check for 6 or 7 figures, we're all set. Doesn't happen that way. So you have to build up a relationship, and that means addressing their needs earlier in the buying cycle. Some of the things that you consider at this stage are user experience, having a good flow, having logical labels, having good navigation, trust and credibility, and making sure that I feel safe and secure there, professional quality of visual design, clear calls to action, copywriting, and all of these things kind of play together to create a good single unified experience. You're going to track it with analytics. You're going to probably be even doing basic split testing on tactical parts of your site and on your landing pages or your home page. And you might even be trying to more actively gather that voice of customer and potential problems with your site through surveys, user testing, in-page analytics, and actually recording what people do on your site, things like Crazy Egg or ClickTail for the more advanced capabilities. So you're kind of on the right track, but this is still an experience for a single person or a single audience. It's one experience. It doesn't change. Okay? So an example of that, and then I would say, we don't have a ton of traffic, and like to think that we also eat our own dog food, as they say in the advertising business, is our own site. So you can see here, professional site design, clear calls to action in the form of orange buttons, clear site organization. We have trust in the form of client logos for this particular service that we offer here, the strategic jumpstart page that we're on. And we're very deliberately focusing the eye with the sports car to focus on the orange button, and we have a universal call to action with my bald head in the header in case you're ready to pull the trigger when you're not on an actionable page. So this kind of basic optimization. And you have also design things, white paper downloads and things like that, deeper in the site when appropriate. Okay, so that's great, nothing wrong with that. The next stage is what I call basic segmentation, and the realization that different people, or at least different populations of people, not individuals, but populations or groups of people coming from different traffic sources are interested in different things. They're going to react differently to what you do. So the important thing here is that we're really considering, okay, where they're coming from. for SEO, they're going to have one experience. For pay-per-click, we're going to have a dedicated landing page. There's affiliate, there's social. If we're making specific offers, we're going to have dedicated landing pages. We're going to carry through on that information sent, if you will, and keep our promises. So if we are on Facebook and we have some kind of deal or white paper download, that's going to link directly to a page that will let you download that white paper, for example. So we're creating a continuity of experience for different people based on their intent. And this extends to our own in-house email campaigns and mailing lists, so that every link on our email, any call to action links, go to dedicated landing pages that are targeted for a specific purpose. And also often along with this comes traditional retargeting. Now for those of you that are unfamiliar with this, it basically means if somebody's come to your site, you're going to follow them around, whether it's on Facebook, it has its own form of retargeting, or on the broader web, and when they see ads, they're going to see on all the other sites they visit, they're going to continue to see ads or content from your site. So if they've been there, they've expressed an interest, there's a very strong correlation between them coming back and investing more time and eventually acting or buying from you. So you want to kind of always be top of mind. So you're kind of stalking them all over the internet with targeted ads. And depending on which places on your site they visited, for example, on our site it might be small business page versus a large business page, they've already kind of declared their intent by what content on the site they visited. So the ad we might show might be more targeted towards large business or small business. Okay, so that's great, and we're recognizing that there are different audiences showing up, but there's still groups of people. Number one, that's important to understand. They're segments, they're not individuals, and it's still basically a static experience, okay, with the exception of a little logic maybe in the retargeting and what you're going to, message you're going to use once they leave your site. It's essentially we're saying we know what the segments are ahead of time. We're going to talk to each of these traffic segments differently. Okay. But I want to flip the switch and go on to the two more advanced kind of levels of business-to-business optimization. And this is a dynamic experience now. That's really the key to it. We're able to, on the fly, change the content that's going on in the site. So it's not just one site size fits all or broad categories of people that we're targeting towards. It's actually the individual. So we have to, of course, become more flexible, coordinated, and balanced, if you'll pardon the continuation of the gymnastics analogy, and do that. So there's a couple of levels here that I want to talk about, and Greg is going to, on part two, pick up and talk about this level, because this is really kind of where the work they do at demand-based fits into the picture. I'm going to give you the second level here, the second level of dynamic optimization, as a nirvana or something to stretch for, so you understand kind of the full map and the full picture. So real-time anonymous targeting. What you're doing here all of a sudden is now creating content on the fly based on knowledge about your visitors. And typically what you're doing is, it's still in a way kind of segmenting, in the sense of you create dedicated content and it's ready in advance for key audience segments. Now this might not be the same thing like traffic sources like I was talking about earlier. It might be things as specific as the industry or the company level. If you have you're working with large enterprise accounts, someone coming from Canon or Nikon, you're actually going to have specialized experiences for those people. But here's the key. It's not just segmenting anymore. It's the ability to change the site experience in real time based on that information. And that's when you really start getting the payoffs, where you can insert that on the fly. And all you need is basic tools, some simple rules for deciding what you're going to change, what aspects of the site experience you're going to change. One of the key benefits of this, I'm sure Greg will touch on this, is that you get to ask for less information about your visitors. A lot of times we want these long forms to get filled out when we're doing lead generation, and instead you already know, what geography I'm coming from, what industry, how many employees my company has. A lot of this information is already there, so you don't have to ask me about it. And as a result, your forms are a lot shorter and it seems a lot less imposing. Okay, but before we go on to Greg's part of the presentation, I want to talk about kind of nirvana. And this is, if you want to bring it all together, the difference was with the stage 4 stuff I was talking about is that yes, it's personalized to the individual, but that individual is still anonymous. And when it gets really, really powerful and also a lot more complicated from a technical standpoint is to dynamically tailor the experience you have to every individual. To do that based on everything you know about them, okay? So their experience from visit to visit might change, and the content changes are based on third-party real-time data, like what demand-based offers, but also behavioral targeting, what they do and don't do on your site, what they click on, how long they hesitate on a certain page, whether they come back and they're a return visitor, okay? You might also be lead scoring them based on your marketing automation system. You might tie in your customer history from your CRM or your customer database, and all of these things can be combined to, on the fly, truly create that one-to-one experience for the visitor. And that's when it gets very, very powerful. Again, we're seeing improvements on the order of 1,000% in conversion rates when you have that level of integration and knowledge about the visitor. So I'm going to switch it up here and throw it to Greg, and he's going to talk about, I guess, what you would call stage 4 in my hierarchy, or real-time targeting of anonymous visitors. So Greg, welcome, and if you just go ahead and share your screen, I'm going to make you the presenter. And I think for some reason Greg may still be muted. Greg, we're not hearing you. Okay, go ahead.
It helps if I click the unmute button. Sorry about that.
No, that's all right.
Just say thanks. So much of what you said, I think, is so on message for helping people understand where they need to be headed and what they need to be thinking about, and trying to take these insights that you're providing them and say, how do these relate to my business, and what do I need to be thinking about? So demand-based is a, I'm going to introduce you to demand-based. We are a real-time targeting and personalization platform for B2B. And, sorry, I'm trying to get, there we go. What we've built is a technology that can uniquely identify the company on your website. Use this visitor identification technology to plug into your existing tools, such as targeting display ads, optimizing the website, which is what we're going to talk about, or passing information into your CRM for sales prioritization.
And Greg, we're not seeing your screen change. We're still on the part 2 slide. I don't know if you've flipped it, and so I just want to make sure. There we go.
There we go. Okay. The way we've approached this, which is the point that Tim said, is demand-based started not actually in this with this technology. We were just really focused around trying to optimize the entire revenue cycle. And what we started recognizing was this difference of what's going on the website and the challenges we had. We've since then built an approach to optimization to optimize around companies, and we built a proprietary and patent-protected IP address to company database, which means we can identify the visitors on a website on a first visit and provide detailed information about those visitors so that you can optimize experience in real time. When you think about website optimization, and just kind of some of this will just pick up on the themes that Tim was talking about, a lot of what us as B2B companies can look towards is what the leaders in B2C have done. And this idea of the zero-click website is probably best established by the experience we all now expect on Amazon. Every visit is personalized to that visitor. Just as Tim was saying, it's personalized based on a wide range of information. Amazon didn't get there in one step. They've worked their way there. But now they realize that this personalization is a critical part of getting their multi-billion dollars in online sales. Well, what is the path forward for B2B? as Tim was saying, there's a lot of companies that have a very generic, one-size-fits-all, decision-making by hippo. I love that idea, right? And what do they get? They ultimately get a very low conversion rate and very low engagement. The B2B companies that are really starting to drive optimization are starting to see this dramatic lift, and they're aligning this customer experience to revenue. And I'm going to show you some examples of what people are doing. But what this really centers around is the difference of what, as Tim was mentioning, of what happens in B2B. And I use the example, I'm a runner. I run an ASICS running shoes, but I have never been to the ASICS website. However, in B2B, there's not a sale that's going to happen that doesn't at some point touch your website. If you're at a trade show, I was at ConversionCon last week, had some great conversations. Any of those people that I was interested, my next most likely step, to go to their website. If somebody leaves a great outbound phone call on my voicemail, that was kind of interesting, I'll Google them, see what comes up. So in B2B, the role of the website is becoming more and more central. What's exciting about that is that every one of those engagements leaves data. And you can start to use that data to figure out how to optimize those web experiences going forward. A big part of that data is what you know about the visitors. You know, as Tim was saying, most people start in this unoptimized stage one model. I kind of called it a bit of Where's Waldo. I'm picking on Teradata here. They're actually a partner of ours, but it takes 4 clicks. They have some great content for oil and gas companies about how to use big analytics for that, but they're stuck with what would be a very generic message. It's when people think about their website in B2B with the library model. Now contrast that to what Amazon does. Amazon doesn't think of their website as a library. They think of their website as a selling model. And that's really the opportunity, is to think about your website as an extension of your sales team. So this idea of getting to 0-click and optimizing based upon what you know about the visitor is really about extending what your sales reps would do and how your sales reps would engage anybody that they're talking to based upon what they know about them. What's exciting is to see the results that companies are getting doing that. In these stages, there's kind of steps that people can take to crawl, walk, and run. Each step is showing big results. Shantanu Narayan, who is the CEO of Adobe, said it very well when thinking about optimizing the web customer experience. All marketing is more effective when you know who you're talking to. When you know who you're talking to, you can start to optimize that experience. One of the differences with B2B than B2C is there's another dimension to optimize on, which is the account and the account attributes. And that's because when you think about a sales rep and the sales engagement, sales reps rarely ever have a sales meeting with just one person. In fact, IDC came out and say that the number of stakeholders involved in sales decisions has increased by 40% in the last 3 years. That's from IDC. So when you think about the audience you're trying to optimize your web experience for, it's analogous to the audience your sales rep is trying to optimize for, and that's part about knowing the account. Clearly, that's what Demandbase has tried to optimize for and sees the benefit of customers doing. So a simple place to start is on your what I call the 0 moment of truth. I've seen stats that say it takes between 4 and 6 visits before someone will actually fill out a lead form. But if you can remove the friction from that lead form and start to optimize that experience for what you know about the visitor, you're going to see a dramatic increase in conversion rates. So HP, one of these customers, uses Demandbase to understand the company on the lead form page, which means they don't have to ask all those detailed questions about industry, company size, and location, office locations. They already know that information and can optimize conversion. What they're seeing is a 300 increase in form completion rate, tracked to over $1 million increase in revenue, just by removing the friction of getting more people to fill out the form, being able to use a shorter form, and then being able to push that through to their sales cycle. That's just a simple one step of optimizing for that single audience because you know who you're talking to. The next level is really starting to optimize and segment for multiple audiences. So this is a customer ARC site, and what they've done is they've taken the small section on their website, which is top picks, and when it's a utility company, they serve up the white papers and case studies that are more relevant to utility companies. When it's someone from a branch of the government, they have government-related case studies and webinar offers. Same thing for medical or financial. Simply put, it's removing the clicks to get to the great content, the most valuable content for that audience. What did they got? They got a 200% increase in clicks to these white papers and downloads. They're doing lead scoring using their marketing automation system, which means they have more leads with a higher lead score because they've had deeper engagement in the websites. And they also get better insights into what is relevant to whom. And that's really the opportunity. By focusing on web engagement, you're going to create more data for yourself to understand and get insights about customers, not only who they are and what their interests, but what's relevant to different audiences. You might think that utility companies are really focused on CIP compliance, but maybe they're focused on something else. But because they know who they're talking to, they can start to optimize this experience. And then kind of get to the next level, which is more of the almost Amazon-like real-time personalized. Akamai is doing that in that they're calling out and creating a web experience directly for eTrade.com when eTrade comes to their website. The other really creative thing they're doing is when it's a competitor, they redirect them to the careers page. Now, they're doing that just like Tim said. They're pulling information from their CRM system and associating that as attributes of companies on their website, and then in real time understanding who they are and being able to build that web experience customized for that web visitor. So when you think about this next level of customer experience, it's starting to recognize that your website is the center point of interaction for all of your future revenue. And just starting to optimize slowly and stair-step approach is going to reap some real benefits for your company. It starts with understanding your sweet spot. Simply put, who do you sell to? As Tim said up front, in B2B, you don't sell to everyone. It's low volume, high value. The first thing that we recommend everyone do is the marketing team, before they start in any kind of web redesign project, sit down with your sales team. Talk to them about what are the attributes of the companies that are most likely to become revenue. When you get into web optimization, as Tim said, you cannot optimize for everyone. You have to optimize for segments, not the average, particularly in B2B. I like to say in B2B, your future revenue could come from anywhere, but it probably won't. Your future revenue is most likely to come from companies that look like companies you've sold to in the past. So starting at that level of understanding your sweet spot is first and foremost. That's before you dive into any kind of web optimization project. Then it's thinking about personalization. Many of us in B2B marketing are really focused and measured on leads, and that is fantastic, and we should do that. We've got to recognize that the thing that precedes lead flow is engagement. If you can have more relevant content in the 8 to 12 seconds you have someone, that's when you're going to start to win. I look at it all the time. My CTO is a classic example of this. We will talk about a map reduction technology for this or that data set, and all he does is he says, I went to their website and it didn't look interesting. I went to these guys' website, I found a great white paper, I think we should use them. He didn't fill out a lead form, but he was judging the vendor very quickly by how relevant that experience was made for them. Then because you start to build a model based upon identifying and understanding the attributes of your visitors, you can remove the friction. As I forgot the word friction there, I apologize. Remove what? Remove friction from the zero moment of truth. And that's your lead forms. That's when the marketers are going to start to see that direct ROI.
Greg, I think you're crazy like a fox. You removed the friction from the slide, So
exactly. I was so creative. That was it. Thanks, Tim, for doing that out. And then the next thing is really thinking about your analytics sophistication. If you can imagine, Amazon has a massive organization dedicated to understanding user behavior on their websites. Most of us in B2B are not even going to come close to that. But what you can do is, whether you're using a tool like Site Catalyst, Web Trends, or Google Analytics, you can start to segment your audience to understand how are healthcare companies acting differently than financial services companies, or how are enterprise companies acting differently than SMB companies. I like to say that SMB companies are always looking for the free trial. Enterprise companies are not looking for the free trial. What they're looking for are the reassurance that you're enterprise caliber. So starting to optimize, so starting to measure what are the different behaviors by these different audiences goes back to point one, so that you can understand and start to optimize for your sweet spot and not trying to optimize for the average of everyone. I think overall, what's really exciting to me as a B2B marketer is how these digital technologies are both catching up to the complex nature of a B2B sale, but they're getting so much easier to use. We do not need the big organization of Amazon.com. I myself, I run reports in Google Analytics just to see what's going on with our sweet spot audience. We've defined an audience of about 10,000 companies that we think represent all of our future revenue. And that's all we measure against. I look at it, but I don't optimize for total volume of traffic. I optimize for how much traffic did I get from those 10,000 companies. But that's about adapting web customer experience towards B2B and understanding that the zero-click idea, that if I can make the experience for those people when I have the opportunity to engage with them more effective and more engaging, it will align to revenue downstream. And then I can measure the path of those accounts. So we'll kind of move on to questions, but I know, I think that what's nice about working with SiteTuners is Tim has the expertise to go in and understand the nature of an individual business and see that the opportunities for optimization based upon having done this across many, many customers. Demand-based is a technology you could choose to use to understand who your visitors are and make the attributes of those visitors actionable in real time. So we try to work together with SiteTuners. I know Tim is offering right now a special offer for Express Review.
Yeah, I can. I'll just I can fill in the blanks. If you really want to kind of get a quick triage of your site, feel free to sign up for one of our Express Reviews. And if you do that over the next week, just mention zero-click after you order, and we'll deduct $100. On the next slide, also, Greg, we have the conversion conference coming up, and as Greg mentioned, he's been a speaker at a highly rated speaker at our events. We have 3 shows a year in the U.S. San Francisco just passed. We have Chicago in June. Hope you'll all take advantage of this offer and meet us there. And Boston at the end of September. For our European audience, we also have Paris, London, and Berlin, and I'll be in Berlin keynoting later this fall. So if you want to drink from the fire hose and get to interact with a lot of the top people in the field, as well as your kind of cutting-edge peers, that's the place to go. At this point, we're going to just go on the last slide with our contact info and just do the Q&A. We've had some questions come in. Please chat your question into the question pane, and we'll try to cover as many of them as we can. We want to leave a good bit of time for the Q&A. One question I had,
just as kind of a plug for the conversion conference. I know a number of people are at different stages of where they are when they're thinking about web experience optimization and conversion optimization. I've been to the conversion conference a number of times. I find that not only is the content presented by the speakers great, it's the community around it that are all thinking about how do we take advantage of the new technologies available and make them work for my business. So for any of you, Tim does a great job at those, and so I'd encourage you really to consider attending.
Yeah, and Greg, you keep mentioning me personally. I appreciate the shout out, but I want to make it clear that this is really the top people in the whole field from a variety of companies. It's not just a SiteTuners conference. It's really the conference for the whole industry.
Well, I like it because it almost feels like a movement, in a way. These experts in optimizing for conversion, and it is a community. It is a lot of thought leaders, but even all the attendees bring all their day-to-day experiences and how they're combining the insights with what do you got to do in your organization? How do you convince your management it's worth doing these things? And that's why I just find the community really, really motivating.
Well, thank you for that. We have had some good questions already. Please, again, just you should have a question pane. Feel free to type your questions into that, and we'll get to as many as we can. So one question we have is about IP identification and whether it works for smaller businesses or if this is really only applicable to larger companies. So a lot of small businesses use home offices or shared IP addresses. Greg, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's kind of about stages of segmentation. You can use IP identification to segment all of your audience between SMB, between enterprise, mid-market, government, education, at kind of a macro level. And so especially if you serve multiple audiences, that first level of filter is really important. And then, we kind of, everybody draws the line at SMB a little bit differently. We draw the line at about 10 million in revenue. And so what you can do consistently and effectively is get detailed attributes about companies that are larger than that in the mid-market and the enterprise phase. Smaller than that, you would always know where they are and that they're an SMB company. You can tell that by the type of network they're on. So it's a broad segmentation. So if you serve multiple audiences, IP identification can work really well for you. If you're just serving only an SMB audience, you probably won't get as much detailed attributes from IP identification.
Okay, and then one additional question. Vivek, welcome to the webinar. Vivek was wondering, you say people are visiting anonymously, so unless they fill out a form, so what is this information that you're appending? What do you actually know about them based on the IP address? So I don't think, it's not individual level information, it's company level, right? So can you give us some examples of what you know about their company?
Right, and that's just, so demand-based backed into, we didn't start out saying, hey, we have IP addresses. We started to say, hey, there's an opportunity here to optimize B2B marketing so that marketing is marketing to accounts the way sales is selling to accounts. And that's why we kind of call it, if you start to think with an account-based marketing approach, you start to realize that, again, at the highest level, the first segment you want to understand is this visitor from a company that looks like other companies I've sold to? In other words, is this somebody in my sweet spot? So what you can tell from an IP address using demand base, and again, this is a proprietary database that we've built because the publicly available information doesn't provide this level of detail. But we can give you company name, industry, company size, over 40 detailed attributes. Plus we can give you attributes such as what technologies does this company use? Are they an Oracle user? Are they a Marketo user? Are they all types of technology and information. So you make attributes about the company available in real time.
Yeah, and that's a key. I think that what you just said. The demographic stuff in a way is a little more generic. Industry code, number of employees, geotargeting, all that stuff. It's kind of what you'd expect from a data append. But you've also done researches into who's using what technologies, because for a lot of companies, there's a certain level of complexity. Unless you have a certain pain, unless you're on Salesforce or unless you're on Oracle, then you're probably not a good customer for us. So knowing that is also very, very powerful. Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Exactly, and so that that next level that, as you mentioned, Tim, is think about using your CRM attributes. Your CRM system is a gold mine for your company's insights into the marketplace. Sometimes it's just who's in the pipeline, who's not in the pipeline, who's a named account versus not. Those attributes are associated to an account and can be made actionable in real time. You could even go so far as what's the topic or the product that I'm trying to pitch this customer and use that as an attribute for this visitor. And so the account-based approach of using their technology or what you know about them in a CRM system is the only method effective. We actually tried to do this with cookies and tried to do this to the individual level. And we ran into 3 problems with cookies. One, we couldn't consistently get good data into a cookie. You got to actually push it in. People have to accept cookies in the browsers. 2, everybody kept deleting cookies on their browser. And then privacy policies would really block that. And then 3 is I might have 1 or 2 people from a company cookied with some critical information, but I won't necessarily have the entire account. And that what we started to see is that point about how many influencers get involved in a consideration of a decision. And that's why we moved to this account-based approach and using these attributes like technology or what stage they are in the sales pipeline as an attribute of a company, and then making that attribute actionable on your website in real time.
All right, so let's switch gears a little bit and talk about the business rules that you create based on this. I mean, this sounds really complicated, but to strip it down to brass tacks, or mixing metaphors here, when someone comes in, you know this set of data points about it. Give us an example of some starting points, some basic optimizations that you would do. What are the business rules that you're using to change the content? Or
and
your typical client is using.
Yeah, and so whatever technology you're using, and this is where something like SiteTuners can give you some more guidance. It's a simple API call from your web page, and you use the attributes either in your CMS system. So you could say in your CMS system, it's if this then that. If it's a healthcare company, show the healthcare white paper in this area. If you're using an optimization tool like Optimizely or Monetate or Test and Target, then it becomes even easier because you've already defined an area for optimization. This just becomes a different set of attributes when you do the optimization.
Okay, now Chris was asking for specifically, are there CMSs that you'd recommend that are easier to work with to do this kind of personalization?
Yeah, so from a CMS standpoint, getting started, we like Drupal. Open source, it's great. There's a lot of tools. There's a great developer community around it. You can get going with things. So we strongly recommend Drupal. Then you kind of move up your stack to a more sophisticated one like Limelight or Electron. And if you're from a larger company and you have more resources, you can look at CQ or SDL Tridian. It's still about the same thing of mapping what do you want to say to whom when they're on your website, and that you can plug that in. We like to say start with segmenting. What are better offers for enterprise companies versus SMB versus government. And then the second stage is starting to do offers by industry. And then the third stage is starting to do offers by what we call account status. Is this an existing customer, or is this somebody already in the sales pipeline? So that kind of using that and saying, okay, if it's an enterprise company, what is content more relevant to them? If it's a healthcare company, what's more relevant to them? Or if it's a named account in the sales pipeline, what's more relevant to them?
Okay, now somebody was just asking about keeping company information updated. What happens, how do you guys keep your data clean? What happens if a company is outdated?
Yeah, so we actually gather the information about the companies, and we have our own database about that, and we do a monthly refresh on the company data. So, Oracle acquires Eloqua, right? Well, that's updated in our database in less than 30 days. So M&A activities, even updating revenue sizes. Some companies have ups, some companies have downs. Adding on what industries they are. We had a great discussion about what industry is DuPont in. The reality is they're in many industries, and everything from agriculture to manufacturing to chemicals. And so we're able to keep that data updated through information like 10K filings. Edgar Online is a great source of information for us. So we aggregate that. We have a number of data partners that we use to keep our company information up to date.
Okay, and then this kind of similar question was, if someone asked, to get taken off of the list and not get contacted, well, that's, that depends on the company's own information. So you would just not interact differently with people that were on your do not call list, right?
Right. Well, that's what's different. Because we're not targeting individuals, there's no personally identifiable information, so you're not really getting called. We're just able to use the information about the network you're coming from, and it's up to them, the website operator decide if they want to use that. It's, again, the similar analogy to Amazon, except it's based upon the accounts as opposed to the individual.
Okay, so the point though is if somebody has to be taken off of your company's email list, you can still continue to dynamically change the site experience because that's being done anonymously. It's not being done with specific knowledge of that.
Yes, Tim, you got it. I'm sorry, I went the wrong way. Yes, exactly. And that's the opportunity, is because Even Serious Decisions is saying now that 67% of the buying cycle is done anonymously. It's done before they'll do a hand raise and engage with sales. So a lot of times people will do that. They'll say, take me off your email list. I want to self-direct my buying exploration. And but now you'll have that information because it's anonymous optimization.
We've had a couple of people ask about international, in terms of your coverage internationally, or how good is the geo-targeting, that sort of thing. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Good. So real quick, on the geo-targeting, what's really different is that instead of saying where is the server that the person's using to access the internet, we look at the office location. So the geo-targeting is very different than it would be with any other kind of IP address-based tool. As far as international, what's exciting, the patented part of our technology is how we're able to take in a wide range of types of data to understand the company by an internet service provider, an ISP. And so we've been doing that, gathering data for Europe. We'll probably officially think our Western Europe data is kind of is at the level where it's going to be a dramatic impact for customers, and we'll offer Western Europe officially later this year. And now for Asia Pacific, we're just gathering data. It's just a big data optimization, a big learning engine that starts to learn which companies use which IP addresses, and that correlation engine is part of what's patented. And that in Asia Pacific, that'll probably be end of 2013 or early 2014 that we'll start to say that Asia Pacific data set is ready to go.
So when you're talking about these kind of systems in general, like demand-based, and kind of to give some people a sense of where in their roadmap this might be appropriate. So what company size or what type of business can really make this pay off from an ROI standpoint?
Yeah, we definitely have customers all the way, from 50 people all the way up to 100,000. So I think that the biggest thing is kind of really starting to think of, I want to be a data-driven digital marketer. What doesn't work is if people are either the marketing organization prioritization is really based on, we're just trying to build sales collateral. They don't really have a focus on web optimization, or we don't really have a skill set to use the data, because the value comes in really learning and continuously learning as to what works better for which audience. So small companies, SMBs definitely can find it effective, especially SMBs for whom, as you put up front, Tim, if each transaction is worth hundreds of thousands or even $1 million, knowing who that is can be very, very valuable for an SMB. So we work with some small boutique investment banks, and they want to know who's kicking their tires. Otherwise, those visitors would be anonymous. And so that's really where the ROI comes in, is what's the value of understanding who's already kicking your tires.
Now you mentioned that you're able to identify kind of through other sources or compiling your own list of what kind of technologies customers are using. Does this extend to ERP systems like JDS or Quad? Do you know their platform or their wireless provider, like Cisco?
Exactly, yes. And so what we're able to do is if you think about the pivot point or the center point is the account and the account identity, then we're able to continuously collect more and more information about things related to that account. So we have ERP data, we have technology stacks, we have over 80 categories of technology insights. Again, some of that we get through our proprietary outbound efforts. We have teams that go in and verify data about companies, and some of those we use third-party data aggregators, and we always verify that through multiple sources.
Great. And we had another question, which is how you can serve content based on current customer purchasing data. How do you tie into that kind of customer database for more advanced integrations? Do you have an example or two?
The simple way, and this is, you can do this more directly through APIs, but you just take you take a list of your companies and you say you sent what products have those purchases. Those essentially become tags into our data set for that customer. And so since each API key is custom to a particular customer, you can associate any number of custom tags about an account. So what products they're already using would be a custom tag about, what is NetApp already using, NetApp's existing customer, right? And then that tag is returned through our API in real time when someone from NetApp hits your website. So it's really as simple as pulling up a file and creating tags that we associate to accounts that are then used for your specific use case.